Hey guys, here for Quarry, Season 1, Episode 2, Figure 4, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. As you guys know, I love the first episode. I thought it perfectly set up the plot and the characters, and I really was interested in seeing where the show was going. I didn't know if it was going to be like one kill every week or really what was going to happen, but I have to say that this was another really great episode. I really love what was going on in this episode, and yes, there was a lot of, transitioning going on here, but I think there was equal the amount of character development, equal the amount of emotion. Was this as good as the first episode? No, but I did really enjoy this episode overall. Let's just get into it because I definitely do have a lot to say about it. And the first scene in general, I think, really does show how great the show focuses on emotion and character. We see Mac is sitting by the pool and he's listening to tape recordings that Joni sent him while he was in Vietnam. And we see, obviously this is very hard for him to listen to now that he knows that Joni had an affair. He listens to these very differently. He doesn't know if these are actually sincere, if she just made these, and we see that she said that it was 1969 when she made it, but we know it's 1972. So I kind of get the sense that Mac's been away a lot more than a year, obviously, which is interesting. But Joni then tries to call Cliff. Now, we know obviously that he did go back, but Joni tries to call Cliff the same moment a local paperboy notices the Cliff's dead body. Her call goes unanswered, obviously not knowing that he's dead. He then takes the tape out, and I thought that was a great way to start the episode, just showing that they're both, really moving on from what's going on, and Joni attempts to connect with Mac, but he leaves the house without saying a word. She doesn't know what's going on, obviously. We know what's going on, but she doesn't, and we can already tell their marriage is very much falling apart, and I thought they depicted it really well in this episode. So we then meet Tommy, who is a detective on Arthur's murder case, and I thought they did a pretty good job of making this not just a, random detective thing. It obviously makes sense why they're, solving Arthur's murder case for what's going on, but they're hoping to find a possible connection to the double murder, what happened to Arthur, and Detective Ratliff discussed that they've received a call about a body in Binghamton, and they go on the scene to figure out more about the body, because they don't really know what the body is or what's going on there, but they feel like it has some sort of connection to what's going on with Arthur. Now, we know it doesn't, but they kind of think it does. So Mac then goes to a payphone to call the broker, but no one seems to be on the other line. We don't know why, but Buddy sees him, and we very quickly see just how rigged this system really is with the broker. I mean, what Mac really wants from the broker, we don't really know if he's going to get. And he says he looks like he could use a drink. They go to a bar, and Buddy says he has to understand that he wasn't allowed to tell him about the affair, because obviously Mac is very pissed. I mean, he's not just pissed, he's pretty confused, because he thought that he was in this because the broker approached random Vietnam vets, but now it seems like he's just there because of the affair. And the broker said, but he says the broker had a plan, and Mac asks what happens if he wants to contact him. Buddy says it doesn't really work that way, and Mac says he needs to know what happens next. He's not there to be his friend. Buddy says he thought he found a fourth person to play bridge, and Buddy asks how much money he owes him. Mac says $30K. He says he built the file on him, so why is he doing this to him? Buddy says he sees something unique in him, so why is he doing this to him? And Buddy, says he sees something unique in him. Mac says fuck that. He's about to walk away, and Mac asks where he's going. Buddy says he doesn't want to be friends, and Max says he needs to. And again, I think Buddy, they're doing a very good job making Buddy the comedic relief on this show, because he was a lot of fun to watch in this episode. And Max says he needs to know what he's supposed to do next. Buddy asks what happened to the money he owes him, and he tells him that Arthur did something with it. And this is something that, for some reason, I didn't pick up in the first episode, but, obviously, Mac is trying to get the money, and Arthur had a large sum of that money, but we don't know where that money went. Obviously, Arthur was supposed to get the money for what he did, but Arthur, of course, died. So someone has that money, or something happened with it, and Buddy says it's kind of hard to ask him, considering he's dead, and Buddy says to pay him his $30K and maybe he can have a conversation, and that's the best thing he can tell him. That basically he's not going to get any answers till he gets this $30K to him, which kind of sucks, because the easiest way to do it would just be to get the money that Arthur needs, but it's clear that the broker kind of just wants to make things harder for Mac, although it's kind of hard to read the broker right now, since he's such a mysterious character. We can definitely tell what the broker wants to do, which essentially is kind of screw him over, and he can tell him that there's no good news in this world, and Max says he can't come up with that kind of money. Buddy says it's been less than 12 hours since he found the sky is not blue, and tells him to get some rest, and he'll be in touch. So we definitely know that this is definitely, like I said, a very flawed system. I thought they set that up pretty well here, and I definitely really did like where the episode was headed. I thought overall it was very interesting. So Joni and her coworker Andrea are going to approach Cliff's house. Now we find out a lot more about Joni in this episode, which I really do like seeing because I don't just want Joni to be Mac's wife. And we very quickly see she's not just going to be Mac's wife. She is going to be her own character, and I like that. But they're going to approach Cliff's house to pick him up for work. Joni thanks her for the ride since Mac needed the car for some job interviews, and Andrea says it must be weird having him back home. Obviously, Andrea knew what was going on between Joni and Cliff. Joni says it's not. Andrea says she's just glad she can join her and Cliff's carpool club. Joni says there's not one, and Andrea says to riding to work together almost every day is a carpool club, and Andrea says the two of them should have hooked up before Mac got back. Of course, she doesn't know that Andrea and Cliff and Joni are in an affair. She clearly does not know about that, as does no one, really. Andrew says that everyone at work can see how much he digs her and that there's no harm in a little fling. Joni says she should hook up with Cliff, and then they spot the police investigating the scene, which I like that very abruptly all of the fun and playfulness of that scene very quickly turned into agony and sadness when Joni, is ignoring Andrew's suggestion that they talk to the cops. Tommy watches them leave because you can tell that Cliff really did mean something to Joni. And you definitely do see here that Joni does care about Cliff. Are they trying to condone Joni's affair? No, but they definitely do show the emotion that Joni's going through, which I definitely did like. So this week that the schools will be integrating Marcus and will be integrating, which again is a very good topic to touch upon I think in the 70s. It's something the show is getting done very well. It's talking about things that did in fact happen in the 70s. And Marcus overhears this, says he likes his school, asks if they're really going to make him switch schools. Ruth says that no one is going to switch anything yet. And Hattie, her sister, and his aunt is just reading a letter from the school district saying they're going to work to make changes down the road. Hattie lets Marcus know this is a good thing. Marcus asks if his friends will switch too. Ruth says that they don't know how it's going to work out yet, tells him to worry about enjoying what's left of his summer, and Mac then arrives, says he thought he'd swing by, see how everything is going. Ruth lets him know they're okay, says it's his job to make sure they're doing all right. She tells him to take his seat and gets him some coffee. He asks if she's heard any more from the cops, and she asks if he talked to him. He says he did, says they talked about who he'd been hanging around with, that story, and asks if Arthur had mentioned anything about money or buying the kids anything, because he really just wants to find this money. He doesn't know where it is, but he just wants to know what happened to this money, because money just doesn't disappear. Obviously, there's something that happened to it, and she says she doesn't know anything about it. She asks if that's what the cops think this is about, and Hattie says that she'd be dumb to think the cops care about another dead black man in Memphis, which, yeah, back then, not many people cared about, when black people were killed. It was kind of just like, oh, someone was killed. And Ruth says they talked to Mac about it, so they're at least doing something. He sees a picture of Arthur and the Marines, and Ruth says she's sorry. He again has another vision of him in the quarry and the weird masked man. And we don't know who this is. I didn't talk about this in the first episode, but every single time Mac is in that pool, he keeps seeing the same figure, this masked protester who is very inherently against him fighting in the war. And I don't know if that's supposed to be the symbol for everyone demonizing him and looking at him as this monster, or if there definitely is some sort of significance with specifically that man. I don't really know, though. It's very interesting that we keep seeing that, and I think the show's doing a good job at very subtly showing, that Mac is just the guilt looming in on Mac. The show, I think, is handling the topic of guilt very well. So he says he apologizes for the interruption. She says she'll walk him out and says she's sorry for all the chaos. Everyone's just trying to make sense of everything. And he says it goes for all of them. He tries to offer some cash, but she declines, informs them that they'll be okay, and says that if they need anything to give him a call, and she says to give her best to Joni. He drives away, unaware that the one-legged man, Shuggs, is tailing him. And pretty much throughout the whole episode, Shuggs is hot on the trail. And we don't really know what's going on there or why Shuggs exactly is after him, but I thought it was very interesting what we saw here. So Joni's at work and they're having a service for Cliff. Mac goes to a bar and then shows up at Lloyd's house, but receives a cool welcome from his stepmother, Susan, who we very quickly see very much doesn't really like her stepson and doesn't really want anything to do with him. She says he's not here right now. He says he can wait. He needs his help with something, and she says she has no idea when he'll be back. He says that they can catch up. He goes in. She asks how Joni is, and he says that she's great and says that they missed her at the party, and she says that she was sorry to miss it, but she wasn't feeling well, and he says he came down with malaria after his first tour. He asks her if she wants a drink with him, and this is something that happens throughout the entire episode. constantly throughout this entire episode, Mac just keeps drinking and drinking. I don't know if that's supposed to be a symbol of him grieving or really what's going on there, but I thought it was a very aesthetic choice that they did there. So she says she doesn't do much drinking in the middle of the day. He says she's missing out. He then sees a wedding photo of her and Lloyd and says that was a day. He asks how long she's been putting up with his bullshit. She says it will be 10 in May, and he says they gave her a Purple Heart, and she says that he need to ask for Lloyd's help with something. He says that it's a financial matter, and she says, of course. He asks what that's supposed to mean. She says she really does have some housekeeping to attend to. Basically, just doing whatever she can to ignore him because she really does not want to talk to him, we can tell. And he says he thought they had a maid, and she says it's a figure of speech. Lloyd may not be home for several hours and says she will try him at the office. He sits down, continues drinking, and overhears Susan calling Lloyd, hearing how unhappy she is to have him. There he leaves and then drives home. And that's the thing that's definitely very sad, is that there doesn't really appear to be many people that actually want, that actually want Mac there. Everyone seems to either want him, just want to get rid of him, or they kind of are just trying to figure out what, where he really stands with them at this point, because they don't really know where he fits in. Again, it's kind of understandable and realistic because the fact that he's been gone for so long that they're used to him not being there. Life has moved on without him. But it also shows that, how people feel of him as a soldier. And it's interesting to see, does Susan just see him this way because he fought in the war? Or did she think of him this way ever since, she married Lloyd? This episode kind of hints that maybe it's been longer than that. Maybe these two have always been at odds. Maybe she has never been on his side. But I thought that was interesting that we saw. And again, Logan Marshall Green's just killing in this role. He goes onto the bed. He gets up and he throws the blanket and pillows off, throws the mattress around, breaking things. He just doesn't really care. And honestly, you can't really blame him. I mean, after all the shit this guy's been through in the past, I think just a few days, you can't really blame him for getting really angry and then just starts punching a mattress, which honestly is a really good stress mechanism. If you ever are stressful, just punch a pillow. It honestly really does help, especially to get that frustration out, because it's just better to do that than obviously hurting someone else. Punching a pillow is a good way to do that. And again, it does show that this episode, I think, does show that Mac is not a monster. He just has a lot of aggression and agony in him, and he doesn't really have any way to let it out. No one seems to really be on his side. No one really seems to want him around, and obviously it's starting to get to me, especially when you're returned home and you expect this warm welcome. No one really wants him home, and it's really starting to get to him, and you definitely do see that here already on episode 2. It's definitely getting to him. So Tommy and Radcliffe are then in a restaurant. Radcliffe says that he's going to order them another drink and asks if he should get them something stronger and asks what's wrong with him. He says that he's been staring into space since Binghamton, and Tommy, we find out, was friends with Cliff in high school, and Radcliffe asks why he didn't say anything and asks if he's okay. Tommy says that they were good friends, that they just lost touch over the years, and I thought it was an interesting thing to see, the fact that they, were friends and that Tommy lost touch with him. Very good scene overall, and Radcliffe asks if he wants to jump it off on Anderson and Boyd, and we don't know who that is, but Tommy says it's nothing like that. It's just weird, all these bodies, and that's the first one he actually knew. And it definitely does show that when you're a police officer and a detective, you try not to let these things get to you, but that, it's a very small world, and especially in a small town like Tennessee, I mean, it's very easy for bodies just appear, and that's the first one he actually knew. Radcliffe asked the waitress for 2 shots of whiskey, and again, I think just a very good way of showing the emotion and the way grief is just looming on someone who hasn't talked to this person in a while, but just remembers the connection he had, and knowing that he's dead, really Tommy feels kind of guilty for. I think he feels like he could have maybe talked to him more, and now he feels like he's gone, and I feel like a part of him is kind of gone, which is very sad to see. So Joni gets out of the car, thanks Andrea, and then arrives to find the house pulled apart, the bedroom mattress in bloody shambles. She's obviously terrified. She locks herself in the bedroom, ignoring his angry pounds on the door. He then takes off in his car, still followed by Shuggs, realizing that nothing really is going to work. Joni then finds a knife on the floor and puts it into her purse. Now, I don't know what she's going to do with that, but obviously she has something that she plans on doing with that knife. I just don't really know what that is yet. So Mac then goes to a strip club. He asks around about a one-legged man, obviously Shuggs. He flirts with the bartender Gwen, who says she only wears clothes to keep the customers from hitting on her, though she doesn't seem too bothered by Mac doing it, even though she said she doesn't really appreciate it. She doesn't really care that he's doing it, and He then wakes up by the pool the next morning, which, by the way, they haven't seen anything about him. They don't know what he's talking about. So he then wakes up by the pool the next morning. He discovers the ticket to a wrestling match, which is the message Q, join me. Obviously, Quarry, join me, written on it, and assumes that it must be from the broker because, the broker is the only one that calls him Quarry. So Buddy then meets with gunrunner Joe Don, and we get some good character development when Buddy, just in this one scene, he haggles over pricing for weapons, and they finally agree on $33K, and Joe Don then presents him with a pink-handled gun, inferring that Buddy might like it because he's gay, which for some reason I didn't really pick up on. I thought that he was just kind of flamboyant and just kind of very open, but I didn't realize that he was gay. But yeah, that totally makes sense. And the fact that Buddy's reaction, that scene, is perfect. I mean, that is exactly how someone would react in the 70s, especially back then when gays weren't as common and weren't as accepted as they were today. Seeing Buddy's reaction, realizing that, he's gay, and that, that Joe Don knows he's gay, and realizing that he thinks that he's into this kind of stuff, and the way that Buddy is kind of, he gets very upset, you can tell, but they just completely change the subject. They agree to conduct the swap at the usual location at 7, and again, you can just tell that Buddy just doesn't really feel accepted, obviously. People don't really look at gays in an accepting way back then, and that's honestly, again, very realistic for how that time period was. It's sad, but that's the truth. So Joni is then at work. She goes to sit down at her desk, and then which this by far was probably my favorite, one of the highlights of the episode. Not the best scene, but definitely one of the highlights of the episode. She sees Tommy and Radcliffe, who show up at her office to question her about Cliff, and she keeps talking about how, they were just carpool friends, though they can tell more is going on, nothing else between them. I mean, they can tell that obviously more is going on there because the way she talks about them is not just that. So after being questioned, she goes into a bathroom stall, completely shaken. Like, everything in her is shaking. I mean, she really looked like this is some of the most disturbing news she's ever had. She pries open a drawer in Cliff's desk. She removes this cassette tape and hides it into her bag. And we don't know, again, what this cassette tape is or what's going on there. But you can definitely tell in this episode that there's definitely more going on with Joni and Cliff than we think. This wasn't just a affair to her. This seemed like it was a genuine relationship. And I think we're really going to get more into it as the season goes on. But already you can tell that Joni would not just react if this was just some, some guy that she hooked up with that, she just had a sexual relationship with. This is definitely a lot more than that, and we don't know what extent, but I'm sure we're going to find out more as the season goes on. I thought it did a very good job with that, and Jodi Mitchell, I think her name, absolutely killing that scene. She was incredible there, and I really am loving what she's doing in the show so far. I think she's really taking a character like Joni, who could be very unlikable and annoying, and making her very human and realistic, and they're doing a very good job with that. So at a wrestling match, the broker tells Mac how his father was a wrestler and asks him how he's holding up. Mac says obviously pretty fucking terrible, and the broker says that he would imagine so. He's had one hell of a homecoming and says he admires his resiliency, so not one of the wrestlers could handle a fraction of what he could do. Mac says that he got the better end of the bargain and asks the broker if he wants to work for him because he has a shit life and haven't managed to put his head in an oven yet. Because again, he doesn't really understand why the broker approached him. The broker says what makes him miserable is that the expectation of the world is something other than it is, and Mac asks what it is. The broker says that he would think after the last few weeks that he's had that he would know all too well. And I think what he really means is the savageness of the world, just the way the world is treating him. The world is not a happy place. No one's really happy. No one's really being kind. Everyone's being just very rude, and I think he's definitely talking about that, like the rudeness and the way the world is changing, the way that's getting darker and less happy, and he just feels like this isn't really how it's supposed to be. And basically, I think it's something that Mac definitely is going to realize. I think there's probably more to that, but that's kind of what I got from it. But definitely, whatever that is, I think Mac is probably going to realize by the end of the season. So Mac asks about the money, which is now $26,000, which, hey, that's a lot better, definitely. It's better than $30,000. Well, it's not a lot better, but it's somewhat better. It's a little bit more manageable, and because of Cliff's death, he says that he can get it, but he needs more time. So I'm kind of getting the sense that if Mac kills certain people, whoever Mac kills, it lessens the price of the money, which is interesting. We didn't really see that in the first episode, but I think that's really where we're headed with that. So the broker asks him if he's on speaking terms with Joni presently, and Mac asks why. The broker tells him now that she was questioned by the police this afternoon, that the police are ruling Cliff's death as accidental, and asks where she is tonight. Mac asks why this matters, and the broker says that he just wanted to see where they are right now. And Mac walks out, says that he lured him here so he could send him and his flunkies out to hurt her. He's not fucking stupid, and the broker says she's fine, it wouldn't make any sense to hurt her. Says he has a vested interest between where things stand for them for some reason. Now, we don't know why he has such a vested interest, but obviously there's a reason why he cares so much. So Mac asks why, as if he's his marriage counselor. The broker's surprised to see he still loves her, because he felt that after everything she's done that he wouldn't give two shits about her. But I think just Mac, that she was the reason why he wanted to come home. She was the thing that kept him from fighting in the war. She was also the thing that's kept him from completely losing it. But now that he's realizing what she's done, I think that, I don't know if he feels like he deserves it or if he understands why she did it, but clearly he still loves her. And I think that connection, I mean, you're definitely seeing true love there, but it's clear, I think, that Joni doesn't care as much about Mac as he does for her. Again, I'm trying to figure out if she really reciprocates those feelings. By the looks of this episode, probably no, but again, I feel like there's more to it. So Max says he can give him his purpose in life. The broker says he can't give him that void in life, but there is something he can help him with, and we don't know what that is. But we see Busy at the diner. We then see this very strange scene where Ruth serves a friendly new customer while she's at work. The same stranger, and they get into this really friendly conversation. We don't really know what's going on there, but the same stranger enters her home, and he searches through just dozens of drawers and cupboards, and we don't know what's going on there, if he's tied to, the broker and Buddy, and if something's going on with that. But clearly this man, I mean, he has some sort of agenda, and we don't know what it is yet. But I do like the way that they're putting Ruth into this. It's not something separate. She is, in fact, a part of the story. And I think especially with someone like Ruth, who, of course, we were thinking that Arthur would be the second main character. Ruth is playing that role that Arthur would have played, and she's kind of just seemingly into this and really has no idea what's going on. It definitely is going to be interesting to see where they go with Ruth from here, because I didn't really know what role she was going to play, and I think they're doing a pretty good job with giving her something to do. So Buddy and Mac arrive at the meeting site. This, by far, is the highlight scene of the episode. This scene was incredible. Buddy says he's just there to back him up, says the broker wants him to learn the ropes, and tells him about Joe Don. And basically, he thinks this is just going to be, a trade of sorts. They're going to trade some guns. He's going to give him some money. Everything's going to be fine. But when they get there, Joe Don is introduced to Mac, and Buddy asks if he has guns or not. And Buddy quickly realizes that there is no guns, that they just want money, and that they're just going to give them a bag of guns, and that Buddy then kills Joe Don. The guys get caught in this huge shootout, which is just insane. So many people are shooting, and Mac pursues one of the shooters in his car, and just this insane scene. Buddy's limping from a gunshot wound, helps Mac clean up any evidence of the transaction. Mac then gets away from the van, all the other cars, and then gets out. He heads back to the broker, but such a great scene overall. It just really showed how unreliable the broker really is, and how even for someone like Buddy, they really can't trust the broker, and I really did love that. But Buddy lets the broker know all they have was a bag full of guns and consider the money hazard pay. The broker says they will change it now to $25,000, so already it's going down. But it's kind of strange how Cliff was down, lesson to 4 less, and then this lesson down to 1 less. So I don't really know what that means, but there definitely is some sort of significance there. And Mac asks if everything always goes to shit in this business of his, or did he just come on board at a really bad time? The broker says he didn't know he came on board and says he's glad to hear it, and very strange that he didn't know that. But at home, Joni then plays a tape she took from Cliff's desk. It's a recording of them having sex, and crying. She ends up destroying the cassette tape. We don't know why, but obviously she destroyed it, mainly because, obviously, Cliff's gone and she feels really bad. Now, who recorded them, I have no idea, but Mac is then smoking in his car. He goes to Gwen's house. Joni listens to one of Mac's recorded letters. Gwen kisses Mac. The two quickly get down to sex because Gwen's really the only person that Mac feels somewhat close to and seems like actually cares about him. Even though she's just some sort of acquaintance they met at a bar, he feels like she's the only person that he can sort of get close to because everyone else feels like they've just distanced themselves away from them. So where Joni is home alone and Shuggs, we see at the very end of the episode, Joni is home alone. She's listening to Mac's recording, and she then hears a knock at the door, and it's none other than Shuggs. We have no idea what's going to happen, but that is the way the episode ends. Great way to end the episode overall, but let's talk about the episode and where I think the next episode is headed. So this was a really great second episode. Like I said, I don't think it was as good as the first episode just because it didn't really have that movie feel that the first episode did, but I still really did love this episode overall. Not really much of a complaint, but a lot of things that I really did love here. First of all, Joni, I really like that we got a lot more going on with her, but what is Shuggs going to talk to her about? Is he going to talk to her about what her husband's really involved in, or is he going to try to get her on in something? Is he going to try to harm her, possibly? I mean, Mac is convinced that the broker and all of them are there to kill Joni, and I can definitely tell why. I mean, the first thing that the broker told Mac is that if you disobey me or do anything, if anything bad happens to me, I will definitely harm your wife. So it's obviously understandable why Mac thinks that, but I'm really wondering if Shuggs, what his real purpose is. What is he really doing? Where is he gone? Obviously, he was supposed to be killed, but he's now on the run. I don't really know what he's going to do now that he's going to Joni, but we'll have to see what happens there. That's going to be very interesting to see where that goes, and I can't wait to see the way that all turns out. But Joni and Cliff overall, like I said, I think this episode really hints that there's definitely something deeper between these two. It wasn't just an affair. There's definitely more going on there. I don't really know what it is, but we'll have to see what's going on with that, because I think that's very interesting. Why'd she take the knife? What's up with the cassette tape? Who recorded that cassette tape? We don't really know, but we'll have to see. And the way she reacted, of course, to his death with the detective. That's not a way you react to someone you just fucked. That's a way you react to someone you had a deep, passionate relationship with. And I don't really know, what's going on, but we'll have to see what's going on with that. The broker. I thought was very interesting in this episode. We really did see how negotiable the broker really is. I mean, he obviously has a key interest in Mac and Joni, and we don't really know what it is, but also the fact that, like I said, Mac killed Cliff, he has four less dollars to give the broker. But then he kills the other guy, that random guy that, was about to kill Buddy, and he now is down to 25K. So I don't really know what that means or what's going on there, but I think that overall is very interesting, and we'll have to see where that's going. I like the realization, I like the discovery in this episode that Buddy was actually gay. Like I said, I think one of the highlights was definitely seeing his reaction, just seeing the way that he dealt with that. I mean, that's clearly something that he's kept hidden, that he doesn't want anyone to know, and also the fact that Buddy, was so upset of what Joe Don said. I thought was very interesting. I really did love that scene overall. We'll have to see where that's going. Who is this guy that Ruth met? What is his role in all this? Is he at all connected to what's going on? I really don't know what's going on there. I like Gwen. I'm going to say that right now. I do like Gwen. I honestly don't blame, I don't blame Mac for hitting on her, because she definitely is pretty attractive. But I don't know if Gwen and Mac are going to have some sort of relationship, or if Gwen's just going to be someone that's just there for Mac when he needs her. But I definitely think that Gwen is going to play a substantial role in the show. We'll just have to see really what's going on with that. I like Tommy and Radcliffe overall. I like seeing that Tommy was friends with Cliff, and I'm kind of hoping we do get some flashbacks with Cliff and Joni. I definitely think that would add to this a little bit more. I like seeing Lloyd as well. I like seeing their relationship. I think that's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing the way that that's going to go, and the way that people like Ruth and someone like Joni, the way that they're seemingly getting involved in this, they have really no idea what they're really getting into, is honestly kind of heartbreaking. I really don't know what's going to happen with that. Also, does Max still love Joni? I think this episode definitely shows that he does, but we'll have to see. Overall, guys, I thought this was a really solid second episode. I'm really loving the show overall. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Love to your thoughts on it, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be either for Fear the Walking Dead or for episode 3 of Quarry, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.